The wind over the Harz Mountains carried a sharp metallic scent, burnt steel, oil, and fear. It was April 1945. Deep inside the tunnels of Mittelwerk, hundreds of prisoners worked under floodlights, assembling V-2 rockets for a war already lost. Among them walked Dr. Ilse Vogt, a physicist who once dreamed of exploring light itself. Vogt's white coat was stained with dust and graphite. She moved quickly through the underground corridors toward a sealed chamber labeled Project Harbinger. 2 SS officers stood at the door. Inside, humming machines filled the air with a faint amber glow. On the table lay a sphere of crystal and brass, 12 lenses arranged like an eye. Cables connected it to a bank of oscillators. A young assistant whispered, "It responds to observation, Herr Doctor. The light changes when someone looks at it." Vogt nodded. "Then it works. Memory encoded in light." Outside, artillery thundered. The Allies were closing in. Vogt knew the facility would soon fall, but her device, the Harbinger engine, was unfinished. She opened a notebook marked with both German equations and English notes. At the top, a single line in her handwriting. "To preserve truth, it must be seen through time." Moments later, a coded message arrived. The OSS had intercepted German scientists willing to surrender. Vogt looked at the device, then at her assistant. "If the Reich burns, this must survive. History depends on witnesses." She sealed the sphere inside a metal crate labeled A12 and scrawled a single instruction. "Send to Nordhausen Rail, Train X." In the same month, far above the tunnels, Allied intelligence officer Lieutenant Frederick Chase received reports of a mysterious train departing Mittelwerk. Chase, an American linguist assigned to the OSS, carried orders to capture scientists and secure experimental weapons before the Soviets did. He leaned over a field map. "Train X, that's not an ammunition run. It's carrying research." A British officer replied, "Our scouts say it vanished into the forest before dawn. No sign since." Chase folded the map. "Then it's our priority. Whatever's on that train, the next war may depend on it." 2 nights later, in heavy rain, Chase's convoy reached the tunnels near Nordhausen. The stench of fuel and death hung thick. Inside, he found wrecked equipment, burned documents, and the body of an SS technician clutching a note. Only the observer can unlock it. Nearby, a half-buried crate glowed faintly through the ash. Chase pried it open and froze. The crystal sphere inside pulsed with slow, living light. He whispered, "What are you?" When his hand brushed the glass, the light brightened, and for a fraction of a second, he saw images, rockets, blueprints, and the face of a woman staring back at him through time. Startled, he shut the crate and ordered his men, "Secure this. It goes straight to Washington." The spring of 1946 came with celebration in the streets of Washington, but behind closed doors, the war hadn't truly ended. The files from Germany were stacked high in underground vaults. Boxes marked Mittelwerk and Dora filled secret labs from New Mexico to Massachusetts. The Americans had won the war, but now they wanted to win the future. In one of those labs, beneath Fort Strong, engineers unpacked the A12 device again. A scientist named Dr. Harold Kingsley, a physicist recently brought from Los Alamos, recorded the first American experiment with it. He wrote in his logbook, "Device emits low-frequency light waves that seem to react to biological presence. Observation changes internal pattern. Possible data storage through photon entanglement." Over the following months, Kingsley and his team found that when a person stood in front of the sphere, faint sound patterns appeared, like voices recorded long ago. One technician swore he heard German whispers. Another faintly saw a shadowed figure projected on the wall, working with tools. The official report said hallucinations due to fatigue. Unofficially, the scientists called it the echo chamber. The story continues with Cold War experiments, Project Echo, Vokes projections, and Eleanor Chase's discovery in 2024.
The crate had vanished from the Fort Strong lab, leaving only the faint pulse of light in the air. Eleanor Chase knew that whatever happened in the tunnels of Middlework had not ended. It had only waited for her arrival. Back in Boston, she examined the capsule Vogt had given her. It was warm, almost alive. The amber shard inside pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat. Each throb seemed to whisper fragments of history, rockets firing, prisoners laboring, scientists watching, waiting. Eleanor's mind raced. I need to understand it. Everything. Dr. Samuel Reeves accompanied her to the abandoned research wing of the fort. The air was thick with dust, concrete crumbling around them. The original A12 sphere lay in pieces on a table, yet the light returned, flickering faintly as Eleanor approached. "It's responding to you," Reeves whispered. She placed her hands near the shards. Images shimmered into existence. A soldier carrying blueprints across the snow at Middlework. Vogt writing in her notebook equations that twisted light into memory. Her grandfather, Frederick Chase, moving a sealed crate onto the train in 1945. The sphere's glow intensified. Eleanor felt herself pulled into the images, memories merging with her own. She gasped. The past was alive around her, and she was both observer and participant. Suddenly, the floor vibrated. Machines long dormant powered up, as if the fort itself recognized her presence. The Harbinger engine was awakening. Shadows danced across the walls, forming the outlines of prisoners, soldiers, and Vogt herself. A whisper came from the shards. Only the observer survives. Eleanor knew what she had to do. She lifted the capsule and inserted it carefully into the sphere's central socket. The machine hummed, then exploded in a brilliant white light. History, memory, and observation collided in the chamber. She saw every moment: Middlework tunnels, the flight of rockets, Project Paperclip transfers, Fort Strong experiments. Volk's consciousness split, one copy hidden in Germany and one taken to America. And now Eleanor was completing the loop. With a final pulse, the light contracted, sucking the energy back into the capsule. The room went silent. The sphere was gone. The shards were inert. Eleanor was alone, but the pulse in the capsule remained. Months later, documents surfaced, partially declassified, revealing glimpses of Project Echo's experiments. Scientists noticed references to temporal resonance and observer-dependent memory storage. No one mentioned Eleanor, but some researchers swore they glimpsed her reflection in the instruments, even when alone. In the archives, a single note remained. History is remembered by those who survive to witness it. The rest is light. Eleanor understood that the Harbinger engine had not changed the past. It had ensured it was seen, remembered, and preserved. She was the last link, the final observer. She returned the capsule to a secure vault in Boston. The amber shard still pulsed faintly, a quiet heartbeat echoing across decades. She left the fort, walking into a world unaware of the power she carried, yet profoundly shaped by it. Years later, a young historian visited the Fort Strong Memorial. In a locked display case, faintly glowing under the museum lights, was a shard of amber glass. The visitor leaned closer, and for a brief moment, the reflection in the glass was not their own. It was Eleanor Chase. And then the glow faded. Epilogue: The Last Observer. Project Paperclip Echo was officially terminated. The files were sealed. Yet the memory of light remained in the world, carried by Eleanor's descendants, the capsule, and the amber shards. In quiet moments, when no one was watching, the pulse could still be felt. A subtle reminder: history is alive, and those who observe it must choose what survives. Shadows of the Past. Eleanor sat in the dim light of her Boston apartment, the amber shard warm in her hand. Memories of Fort Strong flickered in her mind, the pulse of the A-12 device, the faint whisper, "Only the observer survives." She could still hear Volk's voice, warning her about the dangers of duplication and the collapse of time. A letter slid under her door. No signature. Just coordinates pointing to Nordhausen, Germany, the same tunnels where Vogt had hidden her split consciousness. Eleanor's pulse quickened. The adventure was far from over. Return to Middlework. Flying over the Harz Mountains once again, Eleanor noticed how much had changed. Trees had grown, roads had shifted, yet the tunnels remained hidden beneath layers of history. Greta Meisner, the historian who had guided her before, met her at the small town station. "Someone has reopened the tunnels," Greta whispered, "and they're experimenting with the old devices." The two women navigated the forest at dusk, flashlights cutting through mist. As they approached the entrance, Eleanor felt the shard hum, a warning or a welcome. The past was alive here. The hidden laboratory. Inside the tunnels, new machinery had been installed alongside relics from 1945. Sparks flew as electrical devices hummed to life, reacting to Eleanor's presence. Images from the past flashed on metal panels. Prisoners building rockets, Vogt writing equations, Frederick Chase moving the A-12 crate. "This is impossible," whispered Greta. "They've combined old technology with new." Eleanor realized the Harbinger engine had left behind fragments, echoes of time, being reassembled by unknown hands. Someone had found the missing logs from Project Echo. Echoes of Vogt. A faint projection appeared on the tunnel wall, a woman in a lab coat, her face familiar. "Eleanor, you should not have returned," the figure warned. Vogt's consciousness had left residual traces in the device. The projection flickered and showed two timelines simultaneously, one where Vogt survived in America, another where she remained in Germany. The shard pulsed in Eleanor's hand, bridging the timelines. "You are part of this loop now," Vogt whispered. "Your actions determine what remains in history." The American Connection. Back in Boston, Dr. Samuel Reeves had been monitoring unusual energy surges at Fort Strong. Eleanor contacted him. "The devices are being reactivated in Germany," she said. Reeves examined old OSS documents, discovering new annotations, references to temporal resonance, dual observers, and light memory. The Americans and Germans had once again converged over Harbinger technology, this time with unknown operators manipulating the shards. "This isn't just history repeating itself," Reeves muttered. "It's history folding on itself." The chase begins. Eleanor and Greta traveled between Germany and the U.S., following energy readings, ancient maps, and secret files. Each location revealed hidden chambers containing shards, pieces of spheres, and journals. At Fort Strong, Eleanor reconstructed part of the original A-12 device. The shard hummed violently when near the components, creating visions of the past. Allied soldiers discovering Middlework, Vogt writing equations, Chase's decisions shaping the fate of Project Echo. The past and present were colliding. The doppelganger effect. Eleanor noticed strange phenomena, fleeting reflections of herself in mirrors and shards, sometimes moving independently. Volk's warning echoed, "Only the observer survives." It became clear that anyone interacting with the shards risked splitting their consciousness. Eleanor feared that some version of herself was already trapped within the device, observing but unable to act. The boundaries of time and identity blurred. Secrets beneath the mountain. Returning to Nordhausen, Eleanor discovered a hidden shaft under the tunnels. Inside lay a laboratory untouched for decades, filled with blueprints, devices, and a final 812 sphere intact. She activated it carefully. The sphere projected a three-dimensional map of past events: Middlework, Fort Strong, paperclip transfers, and even hidden interactions between Vogt and Frederick Chase. A faint voice spoke. "Observer, complete the cycle." Eleanor realized she was the last key to stabilizing the timeline. Collapse and choice. The devices began overloading, energy surging through the tunnels. Eleanor had to choose: remove the shards, destroy the spheres, or risk the collapse of time loops entirely. The shard pulsed violently in her hand, projecting every memory of the observers, the prisoners, the experiments, and the soldiers. Eleanor understood the cost. Only by consolidating the observers, letting the past be remembered but no longer replayed, could history survive. With trembling hands, she inserted the shards into the final sphere, completing the Harbinger engine cycle. The legacy of light. Light expanded, filling the tunnels and Fort Strong simultaneously, bridging decades in an instant. Eleanor felt herself connected to every observer, every memory, every event. Then the light receded, leaving her alone. The shards were inert. The spheres were gone. The Harbinger engine's energy had dissipated, leaving history preserved but no longer interactive. Months later, documents were released, partially declassified. Researchers noticed odd anomalies, references to temporal resonance in memory and light, but no one understood the full story. Eleanor stored the final shard in a secure vault. The legacy of light remained, a reminder that history is observed, remembered, and carried forward by those chosen to witness it. She walked into the quiet Boston morning, knowing that the echoes of Middlework, Fort Strong, Vogt, and Chase would always be with her, and with anyone who dared to look too long into the light.